Yeah, I bumped this one up because after Into the Nexus was released under my radar, I grabbed that and it made me want to go back to the original PlayStation 2 trilogy.
I just remember seeing a teaser picture for Into the Nexus with no release date, so I was surprised when I saw it at Target when trying to take them up on their buy 2 games to get a third free. Unfortunately, they had no games that I either wanted or were affordable for my weekly gaming budget, so I just picked up Into the Nexus. I also picked up Tools of Destruction and Crack in Time at GameStop the next day. So including the HD remasters on the PS3, I have all 6 main games and I will review the rest, just not in a row. Picking up Into the Nexus made me want to go back and play the others in the series. I've always liked the Ratchet and Clank series. The sci-fi theme and humor are really good and it makes the game look like a masterpiece. Ratchet and Clank has the most games out of all of Sony's franchises, tied with 14 with Ape Escape.
I would go so far as to say that Ratchet and Clank are Sony's official mascots. At least for America, anyway. I know in Japan they have that Toro thing, and I think they use Ape Escape as well.
I say that because most mascots are cartoonish looking and appeal to all audiences, Mario and Sonic being the best examples. Although no one really uses mascots anymore except for Nintendo and Sega, so this is a rather moot point right now. Being a sequel, Going Commando came out a year after the original. This game was not in development for that long either. All they did was polish up the original's graphics and game engine, added new weapons, and made new levels, and that was pretty much it. It was approved for development 5 months before the first game being released due to positive reception from the playtesters. Because of the shorter development time, there really isn't much difference between this game and the last. It's still a run-and-gun platform game with a sci-fi theme. You still have to travel to different planets as you try to save the galaxy from someone who wants to destroy it.
The only thing that's really different is the weapons and the story. And there is the difficulty too, but I'll get into that later.
The graphics are better than the first, looking more polished and they look great in HD, certainly better than the first game. When I reviewed the first game, I said that it didn't look that good in HD, but it's nice to see that this game transitioned over better. Every planet is fairly different from each other. A lot of the enemies are the same, but that's mainly because of story reasons. The same style of music returns. It's that techno yet fantasy music, and the voice actors for Quark and Clank return. But Ratchet has a new voice actor and his personality is overhauled. In the first game, he had a very abrasive and selfish personality. He only cared about himself and nothing else regardless of how dire the situation was, which made him a very unlikable character. This Ratchet is selfless and more of a wisecracker in a light-hearted sense as opposed to the more mean-spirited Ratchet from the first game.
It's a very welcome change because you don't want to play as a character that you don't like. You might as well be playing the villains at that point.
There's several improvements to the gameplay. First, you can strafe left or right. In the first, you could only do it with a certain gadget. This makes things easier, but not by much. They also incorporated a leveling system. The more enemies you kill, the more experience you get. You'll gain an additional health point every time you level. And every time you do level, it replenishes your health and it nukes the screen of all enemies. Your weapons also level up as well, but only by 1 additional level, and can be modified with platinum bolts. And the quick select pauses the game, allowing you to select weapons without having to worry about taking damage. You're given armor that will absorb damage, but it's expensive. The first one you buy is reasonable enough at 25,000 bolts, but after that, you're looking at 100,000, 250,000, and 1 million. Some of the more powerful weapons are ridiculous in price when compared to the previous game. I think this was done so that you would do the challenges and arenas that are available.
So you're left with either the choices of 1. Grind for bolts, or B. Hold on to every bolt that you get and don't buy anything. Yeah, it does kinda add some difficulty, but in a dick move kind of way.
This game is a huge step in difficulty when compared to the first. The first game was a good challenge where the difficulty scaled pretty well as you progressed, but here it's like climbing a series of walls that get higher and higher each time. At the 3/4 mark of the game, it just gets to be a gauntlet after gauntlet of enemies and checkpoints are very far apart. And if you die, you'll have to go through it all over again. This is especially frustrating when you can see the end just in front of you. The enemies also hit really hard as you progress, taking off about 4 or more units of health each hit. And the game starts to become one of those bullet hell types of games. There's just so much stuff on screen, so many enemies, and there will be some things that are just dick moves. Like right here, a health pickup, and the second you grab it, those doors come down and 6 enemies are shooting from those directions and you're blocked off from running away.
This is pretty much a guide game, not in the sense of helping you on where you need to go or what you need to do, but just so this way you're prepared for what's to come.
Had I known that I was going to get swarmed with the enemies in the way that I did, I would have saved up more bolts for stronger armors instead of getting different weapons. This game is hard, but it almost feels unfair at certain points because you can dodge like a ninja and still get hit by an enemy. I found myself using the missiles that you can control from the first game to defeat enemies, and this weapon's damage is pretty nerfed to hell. In the first, it took 1 missile to kill an enemy. Here, it takes 4 to 9 depending on the enemy. I've had weapons like the Seeker just not work, exploding against things like an invisible wall or just passing an enemy that was in range. The aiming reticule for the chopper sometimes would just disappear, and a lot of the weapons are akin to pea shooters when it comes to damage. The weaker weapons have more ammo while the stronger ones have less, but everything is just unbalanced. Yeah, you have this huge arsenal, but you might as well have a bunny that farts at your enemies for all they're worth.
The only way that I can think of right now to bring balance to this game is to save up all your bolts for the Rhino 2, because that's pretty much the only way you're going to get a fair advantage.
You can access the Rhino early in the game. Now in the first game you had early access to it, but there really was no method for getting bolts other than grinding for them. In this game there are challenges that you can complete to get more bolts so you can buy the Rhino. They're giving it to you early for a reason, and if you don't think that this game is unbalanced, watch how fast your ammo depletes. You'll go in with full ammo, use most to all of it clearing out an area, then be faced with another wave of enemies with little to no resources. And you don't get ammo pickups like you did in the previous game, they're more scarce here. In terms of difficulty, there's handholding, balanced, difficult but fair, and then there's unfair, and this game is at the line of unfair. I've had to backtrack very far several times just to get more ammunition, just because I ran out of the weapons that actually did something and were useful in battle, because they were more powerful than the bunny fart weapons that you get.
This thing's useless.
But the difficulty curve is the only actual criticism I have of this game, and it was the one thing that was almost universally criticized from your mainstream gaming critics. The story keeps that basic structure as the last one. Someone or something is threatening the galaxy and has a few interesting twists to it. The writing is still amazing and funny. One of my favorite jokes is when Ratchet says that they're always late and then the characters look at the screen for a few seconds. And one of my favorite voice actors voices a character in this game, Catherine Susie. In the 90s, you couldn't watch a cartoon without her voice in it. She did the voices of Phil, Lil, and their mother in Rugrats, Fifi LaFume in Tiny Toon Adventures, Princess What's-Her-Name from Earthworm Jim, and my favorite role, and probably the best role she's had in her career, Princess Sally and Nicole from Sonic SatAM. She's done a long list of characters, but nowadays she kinda does bit parts and additional voices and is no longer the queen of Saturday morning cartoons like she used to be.
In terms of age, it's really the graphics that show it, but it's fared better than its predecessor in that sense.
Only certain scenes showed the age, like the boss for Thugs for Hire. The textures on him are better suited for standard definition rather than HD, but this is only noticed in cutscenes with the character. The game does feel like a sequel to the first, which is good that it wasn't something radically different, which is good for the first game because it doesn't make the first one look obsolete. Unlike Jack and Sly 2, which changed their gameplay up for the sequels for the better, which makes the first games in their series feel obsolete when compared to their sequels. But as I said, the only criticism I had was the difficulty curve, which I feel is too difficult to the point of unfair. But I've read that the sequel, Up Your Arsenal, has a better difficulty curve. It's good to see that they really don't change anything drastically for the main series, they just tweak it as they go along. And when I get the spin-offs, I may just do them as one montage video. And that will be after I review Into the Nexus, which will be in the future, because I don't plan on reviewing the main series as a marathon.
Other than the difficulty, I would say that this is a pretty good game. It's a major improvement over the first while keeping everything the same at its core.